Good afternoon. Welcome to Florida You Judge. Difficulties at the moment. Can you hear me, Stephanie?
I know. Yeah, yes, ma'am. I sure can. I know. I received something from Spectrum this morning that said to expect us to have some issues uh, with
Okay. Well,
service.
we're
I
rolling
mean,
with
I've
it.
never seen it happen with rain, but we'll try it.
Okay. So
And
so I'm gonna get off now because
okay,
you were supposed to do the intro, but you stayed
all
momentary
right,
slower, so I'm back. I'm off.
all
You're gonna
right.
be solo. Oh,
Today we have as our guest candidate Nathan Kuipers, who is running for a position on the state representation against Karen Gonzalez Pittman. It's he's running for the Democratic primary right now, and so Nathan, we always like to start with the basic. Nathan, just tell us who you are, where you came from, how you got there, and why you're running for office.
Yeah, thanks. And just to we're running against Karen Gonzalez Pittman for State House 65, and there is a Democratic primary on August 20th where voters will be able to choose between me and Ashley Brundage, who's going to be the best candidate to make sure this seat gets flipped for the Democratic Party in November. So I filed to run for this seat because I have a background in terms of voter engagement and field organizing. In 2016 and 2020, I led voter registration offices that registered over 30,000 voters across the county. 90% of those were people of color. And in terms of that level of engagement in 2022, we really saw the floor fall out for the Democratic Party. And I felt that my particular skill set is something that could change that dynamic for us here in Tampa. So I arrived in Tampa when I was 17. I came on a music scholarship to study at the University of Tampa. I spent a lot of years doing music education at high schools and elementary schools throughout the county. And then for the last few years professionally, I've been a learning and development consultant in addition to my field organizing work. And all of that came together in 2023 when I filed to run for the state house, because after we saw the results in 2022, I thought it was crystal clear that the Democratic Party had a problem with engagement in certain demographics, and that I could bring the skills needed to change that and really affect change in the state legislature, which, I think your average Floridian isn't aware of how much that matters, but they have driven a lot of the legislation that's affected our day-to-day lives, and I wanted to make a difference there.
So can you tell us a little bit about the engagement process and how are you using it to move forward in your candidacy for state representative?
Well, yeah, honestly. So one of the things is that it seems like politicians, they're really focused on their media exposure. They're really focused on this virtual world that, it does exist, but at the same time, it's not the world that we all live in, right? The world we all live in is the world that we spend time with our neighbors and our friends in. And in most cases here in Florida, that means people who are going to have different ethnic backgrounds, different political beliefs, and everything like that. So instead of running a campaign that's engaged on, how we perceive things electronically, I've been focused on a campaign that's based on bringing in people from different backgrounds inside of the actual space here in Tampa. We've had several fundraisers here that are in, kind of dive bars and not places where you would normally expect to see political activity. And I think bringing that kind of message forward is a winning one.
That's an interesting concept. I like it. So, it's going and finding the voters that aren't necessarily the run-of-the-mill voters and getting them activated as voters. So, I left my La Gaceta downstairs. So, and I saw that La Gaceta endorsed your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they said was the commentary was that they wanted to hear more from you about your platform, about the things that you wanted to do when you were there. And I know I met with you several months ago and you were very vocal about what you wanted to do. And maybe they just I don't know if they interviewed you or talked to you about it, or where their interactions with you came from. So can you explain to me what your priorities are for if you're elected for this position?
Well, yeah, and you touch on an interesting point here, which I think is something that, the people who are close to this campaign have noticed in both La Gazzetta and in Tampa Bay Times. They made a mention that my opponent is a more effective communicator or offers more detail. And, the people who I'm hearing from are kind of blown away by that statement because it doesn't add up to their personal experience, right? And when it comes to what I want to do once I get to the state legislature, the first and foremost part about that is I have to be realistic about what I can do, because I'm going to have to be working with Republicans, right? So I can't just say, pie in the sky, we're going to make XYZ happen in terms of the regulation changes that we'd like to see with insurance. I absolutely would like to make that happen, but we have to acknowledge the legislature just isn't going to get there as it's currently constituted. And so what I've talked about specifically, what I want to do, I want to make sure that we're looking at protecting our low income consumers, right? Because right now with insurance, you have a lot of situations where our insurance companies are throwing things to the courts. They're making things go on for years and years and years, and it's not actually meeting the needs of people who don't have money in their budget to deal with a legal situation. It's essentially just throwing it out of active consideration through the legal system. And so we need to address that urgently. We also need to take
I gotta ask a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Because you know what, you're right. She asked a question, and so I'm glad that Stephanie's taking the initiative. Like, let's talk, because politically now, I think everybody's frustrated with name calling and insulting, and your team sucks, and no, yours does. So the truth of the matter is, what you just said is absolutely true. I just checked out your website. I'm gonna introduce your website in just a second, but you're right. Insurance and the cost, that's huge for the state, and so. You just said right. If you win, you're going to be outnumbered by the Republicans, and there's not really anything you can do because you're going to be outvoted. So you're wanting to focus on low-income consumers, and you said that the insurance companies are throwing things in court. What does that mean? I don't even understand that.
Yeah, so there have been a lot of articles and stories that I have heard from people in the community about where they have filed claims with insurance companies, but the insurance company ultimately just doesn't pay out. Or they make a very meager offering, and instead, if you have the resources to get a lawyer and the time to put that together, then you can go ahead and get the insurance company to finally be accountable after years of them lowballing you, right? So we need to make sure that we are protecting consumers in that position. Here in Florida, we have people with disabilities. We have people who are just a few years away from passing on. It's not viable for people with low incomes, fixed incomes, to be addressing this in courts to have the insurance companies pay out for them, right? So we need to make sure, and that's something that affects Republican voters too. A lot of these people in that demographic are going to be people who vote Republican. So that's not going to be something that Republicans are going to be able to stand on like they are with regulation changes.
All right. So what I would ask, since you said that that's the scenario that you're thinking about in focusing on being able to make a difference in that area, I don't understand somebody being kept in the courts for a long time that's unrepresented. I don't envision that. I think that if there's a legit claim, are the people going at it alone the low income consumers, or are they being represented? Because I'm sure that there are attorneys that work on a contingency where the low income consumer would not have to pay anything unless they win.
And yeah, of course, we do have a certain dimension in the legal profession that allows for that, but that also requires that the consumer is fully educated. It requires that they are connected with the law firms who have those resources to work on contingency, that those law firms are not overwhelmed, that they actually have the resources to dedicate to that kind of contingency case. So there's a lot of different things that the state can step in to do to make that process more effective. Right? Because if nothing else, it shouldn't be 3 years to get the insurance company to give you a reasonable offer in terms of your claim, right? And yes, those avenues are available, but when you're talking about a lot of low income individuals who are pressed for money and pressed for time, it's not an advantageous situation for the consumer.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. I gotta tell you the truth. I mean, like I just read not too long ago where an insurance company had to pay $1 million for not paying a legitimate claim. So low income consumers, again, if they have a legit claim against an insurance company for not paying what they're supposed to be paying because it's part of the policy, there's going to be an abundance of lawyers who will take that on. So I don't see how low income.
But Haiti, I think
go.
I think the reason why it impacts low income folks more than it does people who at least have a decent amount of savings and equity, etc., in their properties is when you are low income and you have a giant hole in your roof. How long can you possibly wait? Can you wait 2 years for the insurance company to get around to paying that settlement? If the longer they drag it out, the more damage is done to the property. And if they had the money to fix it to start with, they probably would. But I mean, I see this a lot in some of the more in certain parts of town. That's why we have owner occupied rehab in the city of Tampa, because we get these owners who, even though they own their house free and clear, and then they've had damage done to the house, and then the insurance doesn't want to pay them. So then how are they supposed to, they don't have $10,000 to put a new roof on, or $15,000 to put a new roof on. So the insurance company's dragging it out, even though there's an attorney involved and they are taking and filing suit against these insurance companies. The longer they drag it out, the more it hurts the consumer.
Are you saying that these low income? Are you saying that these low income consumers are living in homes?
There are some, yes. There
okay,
are.
Well, I haven't seen any of these stories though. Like, do you personally know of some of these stories
of the insurance companies dragging it out and not paying?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
The first thing that springs to my mind are the people who are living in, trailers and 55 plus communities and everything like that, right? Like there are a lot of different demographics in the state of Florida where they do own property, but in terms of their actual cash reserves or the amount of time that they have to invest in the legal process, that's a serious burden for them.
Okay, so then what do we do short of you being able to present legislation should you be voted on, and you wouldn't have to depend on having Republicans be on board with you? What are you going to be able to do to address that issue?
Well, and that's what I'm saying. We need to make sure that the insurance companies, and this is something I will also give credit to my opponent for, that she also has brought up, that they are held accountable to an even larger degree than they have been, right? Like, because you have mentioned that there are some penalties. That should be on the top of the insurance company's mind. I don't believe that it is right now. I don't believe that they're actually concerned about the penalties related to delaying these payouts in terms of throwing issues to the courts. There really isn't an incentive for them not to engage in this behavior. And in order to do that, it needs to not even just be bad press. It needs to be something that actually hits them in the wallet, right? And we also mentioned that we need to make sure that these people, they're not being penalized for the lack of time or lack of cash resources that they have to get the legal help that they deserve. And in terms of exactly what that looks like and the nitty gritty, that's going to come down to the legislative process. I have a few different ideas, in terms of just making sure that we're connecting consumers with law firms that we know have the resources to, afford these cases and provide quality work, as opposed to just taking them on the bet that you have a contingency.
Yeah, that has happened. That has happened recently. Florida insurer hit with a $1 million fine for actions after Hurricane Ian. The fine against Heritage Insurance is one of the largest.
And so we're seeing some movement in this direction, but I mean, it's something that I believe we can do more on.
How?
Well, as I mentioned, in terms of making sure that we are connecting consumers with the right law firms, making sure that we are providing them relief, maybe that even just looks like benefit packages or whatever the case may be in areas that experience a lot of damage, whether that's due to inclement weather situations or whether that's due to events that happened there recently in terms of civil disruption or anything like that. There's a lot of different avenues that we can address that with.
Good afternoon, Dave. In that example, protections for elders, 55 and over trailer park. They want me to fail to take the trailer I own to resell it. Okay, very well. So I'll go ahead and I'll remove myself now. Thanks for the enlightening, you know, things that you're going to contemplate doing to improve in this area.
I think we lost her. Okay, so insurance is important. What
It is.
other
So education, right? Education is very, very critical at the top of my mind. Not even just because my own background as having worked in education and being someone who really believes in the knowledge of educational professionals and the value of our academic communities here in Florida. What's most important about education is that it is the vehicle that drives social mobility for our society. And it is also the way that we give our voters a historical context for decision making. And without those things being fully supported, we're going to see a lot of problems all over the state. And, you know, I believe that there are certain people in the state government who know that, and they're working to achieve those goals. And I think I'm very eager to be part of the fight to stop that from happening.
Okay, well, I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you? Okay, I thought you froze there for a second. I do have one.
Go ahead, Amy.
No,
Go ahead,
property.
Amy.
You listen. I just read your. I'm gonna share your website because these are the issues that I'm asking you about that you touch upon on your website. Property values. The rates have just went down. They've just gone down. So property values, I believe, are gonna go up as a result because the interest rate has gone down. That's what I believe. Well, how are you going to improve upon property values in Florida? I think the property values are good here in Florida, but go ahead.
They are, you know, that's the thing. The dramatic increase that we've seen in property values in the state of Florida, it's been very good in some areas, and it also has some serious consequences in other areas, right? Because that increase in property values is also part of what drives the increase in insuring those same properties, correct? So it is something that we need to talk about and make sure that our economic system is addressing, because there are a population here, you know, even inside of District 65, which is one of the wealthiest districts in the state of Florida, there is a population that is left behind from the benefits for those increase in property values, right? Those are the people who are paying rent. Those are the people who are generally struggling to even stay in the area they're working in. One of the things I'm really sympathetic to are the teachers who are struggling to survive in the areas where they're teaching in at the same time. So I think that we need to be really conscious of how those property value increases have been a good thing. And we also need to be really conscious of, you know, for lack of a better term, the trickle down effects of that for the people who are outside of the benefit circle.
Well, actually, I think that the insurance crisis is stabilizing. That can be verified by recent headlines because of the tort reform that was put into place. Now, some private insurance companies that had left, they're coming back. And I do believe that that's being stabilized. But so Stephanie's more of a pro in this area than I am. So I'm going to let her lead.
I'll believe that when I get the bill that goes down. Because trust me, I hadn't seen it. But
yeah, my homeowners association is still panicking about how we're going to do the insurance without a special assessment right now. And so that's the reality I live with.
Well, because you got to let the tort reform was legislated and it was enacted like about a year ago. You got to give some time, but it is starting to we're starting to see some stabilization in that. I was the president of a HOA for 10 years. I know we're paying $121,000 for like 212 units. And then all of a sudden it was $370,000. So that is across the state but that's why the legislature got together and enacted that tort reform. And I believe it is starting to have an effect on stabilizing it. So, but in any event.
And we get stuck on homeowners insurance a lot for a long time, but auto insurance is almost equally offensive. Actually, it might be more offensive to me personally.
Yes.
I have one vehicle that lives in Michigan. When it lived here, it cost me $1,400 for 6 months. And now it lives in Michigan and it cost me $400 for 6 months.
Yes.
Because we have this no fault thing, which is insane.
It is.
It makes 0 sense. I personally
there is some juice to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stephanie. I'm so sorry.
No, one of the things I'm personally offended about is in the state of Florida, they only have up to a $1,000 deductible. I would love to see a $5,000 deductible for car insurance, because I'd be the first person to do that. I'd be first in line, trust me. But and I think a lot of places they miss out on opportunities for the consumers to buy out some of that insurance and do some additional self-insurance. And if we had more opportunities for that to happen, I think we would see that insurance rates would go down, because somebody like me, I would rather pay a $5,000 deductible or even a $10,000 deductible than to pay a $1,000 deductible, because it just doesn't make sense. I'm an old lady, and I don't drive like one. My husband is an old man and he drives like one. And so it would make sense for him to have a higher deductible, because what he's going to pay in is going to be less. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
My opinion is, we've talked about tort reform. And to me, when I think about tort reform, I also think about fraud, right? And I don't know about you, but down here in Florida, sometimes it's tempting to call it frauda, right? Like, because there is rampant instances of that. We're actively fighting property fraud scams here in Hillsborough County, which I'm really proud of, that we're doing that work. Not that I have anything to do with it. I'm just glad we're doing it. The thing is the reason I bring that up is because I think in auto insurance, you also have a much larger opportunity to make a correction based on fraudulent claims than you do with property insurance. I do get concerned that when we talk about the fraudulent claim issues and everything, when it comes to property insurance, I feel like those are less common. When it comes to auto insurance, it's well documented that you have active rings that are working on this issue. I think that's something where we can make a bigger dent by doing the kind of anti-fraud policies, although naturally we need them everywhere. So.
Okay. And besides insurance, because we could talk about that for the whole time, what are some of the other things that you would like to communicate? Maybe you could talk about your thoughts on how to communicate with the other side of the aisle versus just talking about the things that you want to talk about and persuading them to do what you want them to do.
Yeah, one of the things that's been really frustrating for me as a Democrat over the last few years has been, it feels like sometimes we're really into this purity politics, like that if you don't agree with me or have the right opinion on these particular issues, then you don't have a place in this conversation, and I don't know why I'm spending my breath talking to you. That's something that I think my experience meeting voters where they are, we have to just put that down. I don't think that builds or progresses us the way that other people see it. I think we have to, like I said, meet voters where they are. A lot of people at this point, I honestly believe, are Republican because they feel like they're just picking out which team color jersey they're going to wear. And the Democrats have said, oh, well, they feel like the Democrats have told me they don't like my uncle or they don't like my grandfather or something like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put on this red jersey and then let's get on the field. Right. And so I think we need to, again, meet voters where they are, where even though they might have had that impulse that drove them into the Republican Party, it doesn't mean that we're actually that divided on policy. Right. Even the really, really loud partisans, when I can sit down and talk to them about how we're actually going to work to make people's lives better, I actually very rarely find somebody who's like adamantly disagreeing with me in that context. And so it is really, to me, on a certain level, it's telling that a lot of Democratic officials drive those dividing points instead of talking about the ways that we can meet together. One of the big reasons Democrats love to rail on the 30 years of Republican rule, but the reason that's happened is because Democrats haven't been able to offer a compelling alternative for 30 years. So there's two sides to this problem, and just identifying one side is good and one side is bad is not going to get us where we need to be together, in my opinion.
Amen. Because you know what? I became an independent after being a lifelong Republican. And then to me, I don't care about blue or red.
Mm-hmm.
if I can agree, I'm going to agree with what I agree with, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. Then that's where we should all be as citizens, to have conversations, be civil, not insulting one another, and just talking to enlighten each other, enlighten oneself. And then what we can agree on, we could work together on to better our communities and country. And so that I agree with what you just said. Love it. And hopefully everybody gets on that wave.
I certainly hope so. And I will say one of the things I've loved about this campaign is that it has only reinforced my belief in that concept. It has really been a wonderful experience for me to find that when people give me the time and the chance to talk to them about what I can do and will do to make this better, I always leave that conversation smiling. So thank you.
So this is and I'm throwing this out there, Nathan, just to Haiti brought up the taxable property values. This is Bob Henriquez presented to the Realtors Association yesterday, and I thought this was pretty profound, that the taxable values rose 7.14% this year. So when the trim notice comes out in the next month, it's going up 7.4%, but it's the lowest rate in a decade. And so 2023 was 12.3%. So we've seen a big drop in property values, and the jump that went on between 2018 and 2022 was just profound. So, but thank you, Haiti, for putting that up. But I just think it's interesting.
But let me say this to you, what you just said, because you just showed those numbers. Let me ask you this, Stephanie. That could be because the interest has been so high, people have not been able to buy homes.
Well, now, and they've not been able to sell either because they paid
because of the interest.
Time.
Right, but the interest too.
Right.
There's no buying or selling because people are not going to buy because the interest is high. And that has made people, when they absolutely have to sell, have to bring down the prices. Am I right?
My impression, for what it's worth, it does seem like opinion is coming around that the Fed has kept these interest rates too high for a little bit too long.
That's true.
I've been very much on the side of this soft landing approach, but it does seem that for the last 3 to 6 months, there needed to have been a reevaluation, and there has not been, right?
That is correct. Yep.
So, when it comes to these cooling off rates, and I want to be clear, we're talking about property value increases decreasing, right? We're not talking about properties losing value or anything like that.
Exactly.
We're saying that the amount that they increase has gone down, because here in Florida, we kind of have that expectation when it comes to property, right? Is that it's going to keep going up. And that is also in itself.
But I would argue by the same token that may have been some of the decrease in insurance rate because the house isn't quite as valuable as it was.
Exactly.
It's something we have to take into consideration, or it's grown in value as much as it has.
Well, but insurance rates are based on also like how much it would cost if something happens, and the prices of supplies and all of that to reconstruct. But you're right on everything you just said, spot on. And interestingly, they were waiting before the cut, and then now look what just happened because of the jobs report.
Yep.
Right now, it just dipped to the lowest what they said of a year. The rates. So that today the average is 6.4. So so thank you for the stats from Bob Enriquez. But I don't think the values are, I don't know about like you just said, the values, it's probably going down because we've been stuck with these high rates where people aren't able to, and with the recession, people can't afford to buy a home. And the ones that absolutely have to sell, they have to tweak their the price, even though the value is still the same. So I think this is Dave. So I think the Dems simply need to reach younger, more progressive people, not compromise with the old guard on either side. I will vote for D because she is smart and capable. Smith never, because he is DeSantis and ooh, okay, he's going into a judicial race. All righty then. Which is a nonpartisan race. So I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, it
is.
Okay. Very well. Anyway.
Well, Nathan, we really do appreciate you coming on. Do you have any parting words that you'd like to say? Anything important that you want to make sure that folks know?
Actually, just one thing I yeah, one
And
thing I'd really
share your website before we get off here. Sorry.
No, of course, and yeah, my apologies as well. I'm very eager to talk here, so but the biggest thing, one of the things that I want to say, my background has been as a voter, outreach coordinator, and I've always been very big on having large turnout elections, and I will, as your representative, be doing everything I can to make sure that as many people are able to vote as possible and make sure that happens as easily as possible. One of the ideas I've been kicking around in my head for a long time, but I haven't been able to really organize, is the idea of a voting holiday here in Florida, right? I don't see why you should have to talk to your boss about, civic engagement is important to me. I think that should be a really simple something that happens. It's a whole layer of exclusion, which we do that a lot here in Florida politics. So, I've been running this campaign because I felt like the skills that I bring and the experience that I have could make a real difference in our community by increasing our participation, increasing how comfortable we are talking to one another, and increasing the opportunities that we have to engage in these kind of environments. So I hope I can earn your vote on August 20th in the primary, and then in the general on November 5th. And I hope that you'll join me in this work that we're doing to try to make, Tampa and District 65 a better place to live. And yeah, that'll do it.
Well, thank you very much.
Wait. I want to promote his
okay.
website. His website is nathan4fl65.com. It's on the bottom left of the screen. And Nathan, you're running in a primary against another Democrat, and to go into
Correct.
the general. Okay, so who's the Republican candidate?
So the Republican opponent is Karen Gonzalez Pittman, and the primary on August 20th will be between me and Ashley Brundage.
Got it. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to vote for you. I think you sound like a great candidate. By the way, I like some of the things that you said, for real. It's horrible. We have to do something. I'm an independent to kind of level the playing field up in Tallahassee so that things can get done.
That's one of the biggest things. I've been running for a year, and I thought it would just be me and the Republican. And so for the first part of this race, I was very focused on my messaging to NPAs and Republicans. Those are some of my biggest supporters and some of my biggest donors. And, it drives me nuts how this partisan divide has prevented us from talking to one another. So it means the world to hear that from you, Haiti. And, hopefully I plan to bring that message in November.
Okay, so again, his website is nathan4fl65.com. And thank you for coming in. I enjoyed you coming on as a guest. I enjoyed engaging with you. I really have. I think you would make a great representative up in the House.
It was my honor and privilege to join you all today. Thanks for having me on to talk about it. And I honestly, I'll be back anytime I can.
Thanks, sir. All right. Well, you have a good weekend. Stay dry. All right.
I'll do my best. Yes. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.